Yo guys, I've got a spark which I'm going to use to ignite the fire for a brand new episode of Film Fridays here on the channel. Now for today's show I even dressed up all smart like because we are going to be talking about my most anticipated films of the upcoming year, meaning 2023. This list is in no specific order, and what you've got to remember is that this is also my list. I get excited and I anticipate movies for different reasons that you might do, because films connect to different people in different ways. So therefore, anticipation can only be measured for when a film has themes and characters and just ideals that I myself resonate with and therefore have deep desire to watch as soon as possible. I'm assuming I want to watch it, the more anticipated it is, naturally speaking. But like I say, this list is in no particular order. I just want to run through some of the films this year that I'm personally really looking forward to. So that's the general gist of the show, and I'm recording this on the Friday, so it's most likely going to be releasing either late Saturday or early Saturday, but Saturday all the same, because Saturday is the new Friday, so you know. But all joking aside, I'm recording this on Friday, where it is the official release date of Megan. I'm actually going to be watching that film as soon as I'm done recording this, and that has to be on my list of one of the most anticipated films of 2023. Technically, it still counts as a film to be placed upon this list, mind you. And why am I anticipating it? The question is begged. Well, it's directed by Jared Johnstone. I have no idea who that is, but there's a picture of him. That being said, it's a horror comedy slasher type film. It has the same style and ideas as the Chucky franchise, particularly the remake Child's Play, which is a film that's daft, it's silly, the story is just absolutely bonkers, unrealistic. But that's what I love about these films in their tone and style. They don't take themselves too seriously, and as such the satire becomes hilarious to me. At the end of the day, they're horror comedies, and horror in and of itself is a genre that you can do a lot of wacky, ridiculous stuff with. Like, people die in horror films in absolutely ridiculous ways, and for more gore and violence thrown in there, I personally laugh at. I think it's funny to watch just blood, guts and gore fly over the screen purely because of the natural ridiculousness of the situation. In normal life, you don't ever see that kind of brutality. If I did in real life, I certainly wouldn't be laughing because it's real. But in a film where it's faked and visual effects artists were paid millions of dollars to make that look like it's real, that to me is not only an art form, but it's just something to laugh at, the whole ridiculousness behind the situation, the goofiness. And so if this film leans heavily into its kind of satirical style, then I think we're in for a really decent horror comedy, one that can have both chills as well as laughs. And from the reviews of the film so far, it seems as though it's exactly what I'm getting. We are talking a film above 9% of Rotten Tomatoes here. That is very impressive, especially for a film in January, a month notorious where producers and directors have no faith in the movies they're releasing in that month whatsoever. So if you have no faith in your film, you release it in January. Megan, however, seems to be the exception, and I'm very much looking forward to watching it, which I shall be doing after I record this episode. As I've said already, if you want to hear about my thoughts about it in the comment sections below, feel free to ask. With that being said, we're going to move on to the next horror comedy to cover, which is going to be Scream 6. They're getting really confusing with the numbering system, but this is a direct follow-up to the Scream 5, which was the remake, reboot, whatever you want to call it. Point is, they did shift up the characters a little bit. They gave us legacy characters, but they also lean heavily into the tone and the satire that the Scream movies are known for. So I had a lot of fun with that film, and I'm hoping that the same amount of fun can be brought to this one. It is a film which I have mixed feelings for. I can't anticipate it as heavily as everything else on this list, purely because of the fact that the Scream franchise in its entirety have been a mixed bag. We've had some amazing ones, some not so good ones, so this film could really go either way. But it's set in New York, which is an interesting scene, especially for what is essentially a slasher comedy film. So in other words, so long as they get the balance and the tones and the styles right, and the film is shot well, edited well, I can't see myself not having some sort of fun with this film as I laugh whilst their characters get chopped up and bloodied up. It's quite a spectacle indeed. But now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to superhero films, because you cannot talk about anticipation in the upcoming year without superhero films. There are going to be well over 10 of them, perhaps even a dozen for years over. But that being said, we're going to pick 3 out of the frame. For the first one, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is my most anticipated film of the entire year, hands down. The trailer, first of all, looks so damn good. It looks like it's going to be an absolute emotional roller coaster, and that's what I want to do, because I have felt emotionally connected with these characters ever since I saw them in theatres for the first time in 2014, almost a decade ago. So they really need to go out with a bang, and James Gunn, this is supposed to be his trilogy capper, so no doubt he's pulled out all the stops, and from the trailer alone, half of the shots are just reactionary shots of actors not only doing their job fantastically well, but just reacting to stuff. So I feel like they're going to bring so much emotion to this one. You're going to be invested from beginning to end. You're going to be fearful, excited. You're just going to have so many emotions riling up all at once, juxtaposing and making for just an experience above all else. It's going to be visually stunning like all of the other Guardians of the Galaxies. I have no doubt of that in my mind. The second film was a little uneven with the tone, and the characters were a little bit too mean and nasty, so their character arcs didn't feel as rewarding, because yes, they were better characters come the end, but getting there, I kind of grew to hate their guts a little too much. Whereas this one, where we've already faced the character development, Rocket in particular, his development throughout Infinity War and Endgame was spectacular, so seeing that carried forward to bring about the final conclusion to those arcs, it just fills me with so much excitement. I cannot wait. Guardians of the Galaxy is my first MCU, it's not even my first MCU film, it's my favourite MCU film, partly because it was my first watched in a theatre. The second one wasn't as great, but I'm having a feeling this third one has a lot of potential. But then the next superhero film to talk about is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. How can one not be anticipated for this film? It has a lot of pressure behind it, because it's following up Sony Pictures Animation's best film ever made, as well as the best Spider-Man film ever made, as well as my favourite film of 2018. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse just got everything right, and this was a film that I was expecting to be absolute hot garbage. The trailers didn't impress me. The animation style seemed like it was going to be weird and hard to follow at points, and Sony Pictures Animations just doesn't really have a good track record. But then I actually watched the movie, and it blew all those expectations out of water. It's probably my most surprising film in recent years I've ever seen. In fact, 2018 was full of surprises. We're going to talk about another one in particular later in this episode of Film Fridays. But for now, sticking with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I have a lot of anticipation behind this one. I'm hoping that rather than it going grand and expanding out huge, yes, I want to see what they can do with these hundreds upon hundreds of Spider-Man, but I also want that heart at its centre, which made the first one so appealing to me, because the first film is a Peter Parker film, it's a Miles Morales film all at once, so I need that same amount of heart in this film for it to hit those emotional beats that the first Spider-Verse film is known for. But I have every confidence in my mind that this will be a worthy successor. It doesn't even have to be as good as the first one. If it gets even within the same ballpark, what we have is a good film. Like, following up an 11 out of 10 film is difficult, so if this film is even just a 10 out of 10, I think it's going to be perfectly fine. Point is, I'm excited, but I'm also excited for Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Shazam is one of my favourite DC films. Again, I love the tone and the style, but there was huge inconsistencies. One moment it's a children's film, and then the next moment, you know, these demon creatures are biting people's heads off. So I'm hoping for a more consistent tone here, but that definitely seems to be what the trailers are capturing. So Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and it comes out in March, is one I'm very much looking forward to. Of all of the films I've mentioned so far, that is the first one releasing in the superhero category. But now we're going to move on to February films, which are an absolutely stacked month. There are so many films coming out in February that I'm highly anticipating. For cinema, over the month of February is basically going to become my second home. And one of those films to kick it off is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. The Winnie the Pooh characters and Christopher Robin, they all became part of the public domain, which means that any film crew can put these characters into their film without copyright infringement, because they are now publicly available characters. I could make this movie, and that's part of the appeal to it. It's a low-budget slasher, which looks like it's going to be absolutely dreadful, but it has Winnie the Pooh characters doing a completely juxtaposed tone to what we're accustomed to seeing it in, so that alone is a hilarious concept. And as I said earlier, seeing that unrealistic and goofy proportion of violence that just seems completely redundant in a way. The excessive force, the brutality. I'm having a feeling that this is going to have the fun factor behind it. It's going to be a garbage film, but boy am I going to have fun watching it. At least that's what I hope to get coming out of this film, which is why I'm anticipating it. Sometimes you can anticipate bad films. It's perfectly right to anticipate bad films. But we have a double bill coming up next. We're talking about Cocaine Bear and Missing. Cocaine Bear relates more to Winnie the Pooh in the fact that it's an absolutely bizarre concept which has so much potential for self-reflection, and so if it knows exactly what it's trying to be and it executes itself to absolute perfection, what we're going to have is once again an absolute garbage film. But it's about a bear high on cocaine going on a rampage. That is a fun concept. I could have lots of laughs with that, again, as long as it's executed to perfection. But Missing, on the other hand, is from the same mind behind Searching, another film I really liked. And it follows that same visual style, so the whole thing is shot from the perspective of a computer screen with FaceTimes and, TikTok videos and all that, and they switched up the character dynamic from Searching. So Searching is about a father looking for his daughter. In this case, it's the daughter looking for her mother. And so it looks like it's going to have some really thrilling twists, and because it's from the perspective of a computer screen, it really does keep you immersed because there's no sudden contrast in the cinematography to pull you out of the film. And it almost feels like it's done in one take. Obviously it's not, you do have time jumps and all that, because there has to be like new stuff being discovered, and that takes days for such things. But I'm just hoping that if it can have the same amount of twists and thrills that Searching had, this is going to be a damn good film. And from what I've seen, they've shifted up the tone and style enough so it's not an exact replica, but it's still going to have everything I love from that original film they made, and that is why I'm anticipating it. But the final February release I'm talking about today is the biggest one of all of them. It's going to make $1 billion easy, let's be honest here, because we're talking about AntMan and the Wasp: Quantumania, a massive Kickstarter Phase 5, but when it comes to the MCU, I always anticipate the MCU, even given that the track record as of late has been a huge mixed bag. I can't help myself but anticipate these movies because I love these characters so much. I love this universe so much, and this universe is about to get a whole lot bigger because Ant-Man, Giant Man, very funny joke of mine, but Kang, from the trailers we've seen, looks like an absolute menace, and there is a huge power imbalance here which has me so fearful going into the movie. Are they going to kill off Scott Lang? I don't think they're going to kill off Scott Lang, but the trailers make it almost seem as though they could do such a thing, so that alone gives me excitement moving into the film, and I want to see what these trailers are promising. Are they going to fulfill upon them? But ultimately, just being able to see the next big bad of the MCU brought in through a franchise that is usually known for being light-hearted and small on stakes, very personal. Instead, it expands out and has given us the biggest kick boost to Phase 5, introducing the big bad and showing us just how fearful we need to be of this character moving into the next Avengers films. This movie is going to be huge, it's going to make a shit ton of money, and I am going to be there on the very first viewing, especially since I love Ant-Man. He's my favourite MCU character, he's my favourite Marvel character, period. Man, this film just fills me with so much excitement. I cannot wait for its huge scale. But moving on, we have some animation films I'm looking forward to, and it's kickstarted by Elemental, the newest Pixar film, and it's going to be the first Pixar original film in theatres since Onward back in 2020. I suppose you could count Lightyear as an original film, even though obviously it has its Toy Story roots. It's based on the Toy Story character, and it's the film that inspired Andy to get the Buzz Lightyear toy. But still, I wasn't the largest fan of Lightyear. I would have much preferred Turning Red to have been thrown into theatres, but this one is looking like another instant Pixar classic, one that might be a little different from their usual films. That's what I love about Turning Red and Soul. They were so unbelievably original, and they juxtaposed the tone and the target audience entirely for regular Pixar films. And this one seems to do the same, but it has a lot of potential to really relate to me on a personal scale when it comes down to just relationships, dating, the idea of polar opposites attracting. There is just so many themes and ideas here that they could throw in to emotionally resonate with me, truly. And I love Pixar movies, I love animation movies. Elemental we know very little about, but from the trailer alone we can tell that this world is going to be absolutely gorgeous. Pixar are renowned for their animation, and Elemental is one to definitely keep the date for. It's actually directed by Peter Sohn, which is the same as A Good Dinosaur, which is the only thing that has me worried, because The Good Dinosaur, the title describes it perfectly, it's simply good, nothing great. And for Pixar, good is not nearly good enough. So this, I'm hoping, is something a lot more special than The Good Dinosaur. They haven't put good in the name this time, so hopefully that's not a jinx. And to mark it down on your calendars, that's coming out in June of 2023. But the other animation film is obviously the Super Mario Brothers movie. I hope it makes money, because I cannot wait to see if they are going to make an animated Nintendo universe. I'm a huge Nintendo buff, Nintendo fan. I've played hundreds of Mario games, it feels like, so every single reference in this movie I'm going to get, but I'm looking forward to the background details. They're going to be references that you only see when you go through frame by frame. Look at that preview we got of the Mushroom Kingdom. It's detailed. It's a film designed for anyone to enjoy. Kids can go into it and enjoy it as its own, like, 3-act structure. And Princess Peach isn't a damsel in distress, which is a very, you know, modernised look at the classic Mario story. It's no doubt going to be better than the one we've already got, the live action one, which was hot garbage, especially since the character designs are faithful this time. So just all of the colour, the background details, so between the animation and the story potential, I am really looking forward to this one. It releases in April 2023. Okay, so the next batch of films I'm going to talk about are ones where the directors have got me excited, because obviously being a massive film buff and a film student at University of Lincoln, hence the accommodation you see around me, all of that leads to films like Killers of the Flower Moon, which I know very little about, but the only thing that is required to sell me on this film is the director, which in this case is Martin Scorsese. His films are notoriously brilliant, long but brilliant. I watched Goodfellas for the first time a couple of weeks back, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, immersed from beginning to end. The style Martin Scorsese has and the collaboration he works in with the editors, they all just click, and the entire film always works because he can manage these sort of films. So I'm looking forward to the performances out of this film, for cinematography. I'm just expecting a simple, good film, because Martin Scorsese knows how to make him. That years of experience should prove that he still has his directorial flair and style, and that's all I can hope for from this film, and I'm anticipating it based on Martin Scorsese's talent alone. But next up is Next Goal Wins. Ironically, there's a documentary of the same name which this film is based on, because it's based on a true story of the worst football team in the world, and it's directed by Taika Waititi. Now, I understand the last film he directed, For Love and Thunder, wasn't well received, but that's purely because he went overboard on his signature directing style. At the end of the day, that style was always there. It was a style that everybody liked for Ragnarok, and it worked with Ragnarok quite well, even though it did make a bunch of the drama and the character deaths just kind of overshadowed by the comedy in a way, so you can never take things seriously because of the tone. And For Love and Thunder basically took that and dialed it up way too high. But that kind of tone and style, for almost unrealism behind it, and for extremism behind the characters, because characters aren't normally that stupid, but for the worst football team in the world, they're gonna be pretty stupid. And I think Taika Waititi's tone, so long as he strikes a finer balance this time around, will be much more suited to this concept. Jojo Rabbit was fucking perfect with its blend of character drama and comedy, and so if he manages to absolutely nail it with this film as well, we are in for a film that's both going to be hilarious but have absolutely heartbreaking, emotional beats, ones which I cannot wait for. I'm going to be immersed in this film. Hopefully I'm going to love Taika Waititi's style this time around, and I'm anticipating it all the same, so hopefully it won't be garbage. But speaking of stuff that hopefully won't be garbage, Christopher Nolan's newest movie, Oppenheimer, releases on in July of 2023, I should say. And boy, am I looking forward to this. It has a huge cast. It's no doubt going to be seriously confusing, but it's Christopher Nolan. What's not to love? The man knows how to shoot films, how to edit films, how to write films, so all of those will no doubt culminate in what is going to be an exceptional film based on an exceptional director who really knows what he's doing, the talent, the experience. How can I not be left after the trailer with anticipation behind this movie? It just looks like it's going to be a good movie, simple as, and I like watching good movies. I anticipate good movies, which is why we're going to move on to everything else. Yeah, that's right, I've just grouped the last few groups together based on them being everything else. And that first film is Creed 3. I was really impressed by the second Creed film, even more so than the first, which I also really enjoyed. I love the Rocky franchise, with the exception of the fifth one. But this one has nothing to do with Sylvester Stallone or his character, so it's going to be interesting to see the completely new dynamic this film shifts toward. Obviously, in the other Creed films, Stallone was just a side character, a secondary character. So this film is going to be no different in the fact that it's a Creed movie. It's going to focus on Creed, but the character of Creed is still layered and lots of depth, but there's a lot more places to take its character arc still, which is why this film has potential. And overall, boxing films are exciting, but they're also brutal. They don't shy away from the realism, and in this case, the violence isn't blown out of proportion, which is why it's far more brutal. In horror comedies, the violence is just absurd and ridiculous lengths and completely unrealistic, something that you don't see in real life. But when the violence is a little too more realistic and a little bit too more of a reflection of what you can see on a day-to-day basis, especially if you watch boxing as a sport, that's when the violence becomes a lot more brutal. So Creed, I'm really looking forward to it. I love the action sequences from the first two films, so seeing those on the big screen again is something that has got me pumped for its release date in March of 2023. But next up is John Wick 4, another March film. And what can I say? I love the first three. The action in those films are spectacular. The story has reached pretty absurd levels at this point, so I'm hoping this can be the franchise capper and they can just go out with a bang. Maybe John Wick does die or sacrifice himself, something or another. But you know, Keanu Reeves just has such a likable and charming presence, and the action sequences in these films are top notch for choreography, for gun fu as you call it. They have throws, grabs, and just really creative action setups. I mean, the third film has a stable sequence, for Pete's sake. How many action films have an action sequence set in a stable? They're creative with their choreography. So it's a film that has to be experienced on the big screen, and I cannot wait for it. But next up is Fast 10, another film that has to be experienced on the big screen, because at the end of the day, huge action set pieces, and absolutely absurd and ridiculous physics that make no sense. Like, what's not to anticipate about Fast and Furious movie at this point? We know the tone that they go for, which is just complete levels of absurdity, but boy, are they some of the most entertaining films you can watch, especially in a theatre where you get that surround sound experience with a massive screen. It's going to be legendary, and I'm going to have so much fun with it, no doubt. Even though, like all the other Fast and Furious movies, no doubt the story, the script, all of that will be garbage, but who cares how garbage it is? A film, its primary purpose should be to entertain, and that's exactly what the Fast and Furious franchise is capable of doing. It's proved it several times already, so hopefully it can continue with that, heading into the 10th movie of a franchise. That is a lot of movies. But speaking of things with a lot of movies, Transformers Rise of the Beasts. I was arguing with myself, do I put it on the list or do I not put it on the list? Because when it comes to Michael Bay's Transformers, with the exception of the very first one, they are absolute garbage. But the visual effects are phenomenal, and the action sequences are an absolute blast to watch. I mean, robots punching shit out of each other, what's not to love about that spectacle behind it, and also the grand scale and the scope of things. Michael Bay, you can say what you like about the director, at least he knows how to direct action, and that's what the Transformers films are notorious for. The highlights of those movies are the large-scale action sequences. But at the end of the day, the Michael Bay films have really garbage characters and completely unfunny jokes which don't relate to the characters in the slightest, and the tone of the films are always just ridiculous, bogged down by unnecessary side quests, which, or should I say side stories, but point is, they lengthen for runtime of the film for no reason whatsoever. Now, Bumblebee came out, and when I was talking about surprise films of 2018, Bumblebee was certainly up there for me, because Bumblebee not only had the spectacle and the action sequences for Transformers films were known for, yes, they were on a much smaller scale, as they only really involved around Bumblebee, as well as the Cybertron sequence at the beginning, which just got me internally squealing as a massive Transformers fan. And so, fundamentally, because I love the Transformers characters, I'm always going to anticipate when new movies come out. Even though, again, this one is a mixed bag, because whilst I did love Bumblebee and I was surprised by Bumblebee, the problem here is that it's not the same director. Travis Knight is not directing it this time around. We don't have the return of Hailee Steinfeld's character, unfortunately, which is one of the highlights of Bumblebee for me, for a character arc she goes through, because you care about these characters in Bumblebee. It's what makes the action all the more intense, which is why this film needs to give us characters that we care about, that we don't want to see harmed, and then it's going to make the action all the more intense, because we can see from trailers already that this is going back to the Michael Bay style of having really large-scale action sequences, large robot cast, and it's going to hopefully not focus on action sequences over substance, over character, because at the end of the day we need character and we need substance in order for us to actually care for the action sequences. Sure, they're going to be a visual spectacle, I have no doubt about that. I'm going to have fun watching the action sequences, but am I going to feel anything? Am I really going to experience the action? Is it going to become brutal? Am I going to squeal when characters are putting their lives at risk? They can't have any of that experience without first building up characters for us to care about. So hopefully, it's going to be the perfect blend of Bumblebee and the Michael Bay films when it comes down to their action sequences, and it's not going to sacrifice Bumblebee's ability to focus on character for the sake of action, and more action. But now we're going to move on to Dune Part 2. Now, Dune was one of my favourite films of the year, at least I believe 2021. Won several Oscars that year, and it deserved it. But Dune Part 2, I haven't read the book yet, but I do own the book. And obviously there's a lot of potential here. When it comes down to Dune 2, there's going to no doubt be some very impressive visuals thrown in there, something that for the first Dune film made it worth watching it in a theatre for, because between the sound, the visuals, Dune Part 2 is a epic cinema experience that you're not going to get replicated on a simple TV and home setup. We only have a couple more films to talk about, meaning 4 movies, and that's going to start with a film simply called Inside. Now, you guys might know the film Lighthouse. If you haven't watched it yet, you need to drop everything you're doing right now and go watch it, because that film is incredible, I'm telling you. William Dafoe's performance is spectacular, and at the end of the day, its main themes are centralised around isolation and growing crazy, and now Willem Dafoe is starring in a film where a similar type of acting role is required. I cannot wait to watch William Dafoe lose his mind, as he does in practically every film he stars in, because Inside is a film about William Dafoe's character being stuck in a New York apartment building after a heist goes wrong. I'm not sure how much of the actual heist we're going to see, but that heist is going to create excitement, and it's just going to be fun to watch the descent into madness. It's going to have a really great progression type system, which is going to really lean itself into film theory very well, with the idea of the Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 structure, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so, if William Dafoe absolutely nails his performance, he's going to make for such a captivating character role, an Oscar-worthy role, and I am no doubt going to enjoy it from beginning to end, given the concept here, the actors involved. And Inside releases once again in March of 2023. But our next one, Beau is Afraid, comes from a director, Ari Aster, who's also directed Hereditary, the best film he's ever made, as well as the first film he's ever made, and Midsummer, films that, you know, take actors, actresses, and they really give them the opportunity to give it their all. The performances in both of those films are spectacular and absolute career highlights. I mean, Toni Collette got absolutely snubbed at the Oscars for Hereditary. What were they thinking? Not even nominating her for that role. But that being said, this one stars Joaquin Phoenix. He played the Joker. This man could be in literally any project he wants, and yet he is picking interesting, varied films, and he's really showing just how much of a spectrum he can cover as an actor. Joaquin Phoenix is possibly one of my favourite actors of all time, easily within the top 10, and now he's in a film, Beau is Afraid, that I have absolutely no idea what's going on. All I know of is the poster that you see on screen before you right now, But given that Ari Aster is very good at pushing the actors to their absolute limits and getting really good performances from his films, I'm sure that taking an actor as renowned and as talented as Joaquin Phoenix can only result in an absolutely incredible horror film. And I love me some well-made horror films. But moving on from there, Napoleon is another film starring Joaquin Phoenix, which is what I was alluding to when I was saying about the variety that Joaquin Phoenix has taken on this year. It's called Napoleon because it's based on the Napoleon who is played by Joaquin Phoenix. It really is, it's a simpler concept as that, and the only reason it's on my anticipated list is because of Joaquin Phoenix's performance that I'm looking forward to once again watching out in full. So there's plenty of reasons for me to be anticipating that movie. But here we are with the end of the video at hand, and the next episode is actually going to be delayed because I'm taking a 1 week break, so the next episode is going to be on a Monday rather than a Friday, and then we're going to have another episode after that on the following Friday. So 2 film Fridays in 1 week, because one is on a Monday after me having taken a 1 week break, mind you. So yes, please forgive the 1 week break. I have so many deadlines coming up from my university assignments and I really need to get on with that coursework. But say on that Monday for next film Fridays is going to revolve around my deluxe review of Jurassic World Dominion, a video that I made ages ago and I just haven't really gotten around to uploading it yet, which is why it is going to be the entirety of the next episode of Film Fridays. And speaking of Jurassic World Dominion, the final film for me to cover on this anticipated films of 2023 list is that there's a film literally called 65, and it references the fact that Adam Driver travels back in time 65 million years where he fights off dinosaurs. Adam Driver and dinosaurs is a fucking perfect combination. You cannot tell me otherwise. How can I not be anticipating this film? That's all I need to know from the concept. You've already sold me on that movie. I'm going to go buy my tickets immediately. That film sounds like it's going to be so much fun. I don't care how bad it is. Adam Driver is a good actor, so I'm sure he will salvage whatever crappiness is in the script. And there's dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are an instant win. We're going to talk about that a lot next week for the next Film Friday when I release that deluxe review of Jurassic World Dominion. But until the next Film Friday, peace! And thank you so much as always for watching. I cannot, in good conscience, end off this video without first thanking all of my incredible channel members whose continued support help make these videos possible. Without them, these videos would be near impossible to make, so from the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate every last one of them. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, there are plenty of options on screen now to explore, and please consider subscribing to keep up to date with all my content. On that note, this video is coming to an end, so thank you so much as always for watching. Until the next video arises, peace!